Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of RPG Radio. My name is Winback, and on today's episode I'm going to show you my lifesteal vampire tank. His name is Jimber Timber. You're welcome for that image. This build is one of the tankiest, and you will find that out in this video because there are a number of very large bosses that are going to try to step up to us and ultimately get the smackdown. So, without further ado, let's talk about this build. As always, the Grim Tools is down in the description if you want to follow along with that instead, but I would highly recommend this build to anybody playing the game, even though it does take a little bit of a push towards the end game once you get a hold of a specific set of items. Now, my main man Jimber is a Witchblade, so he is an occultist and a soldier, and most of our damage and our lifesteal is going to come in on the occultist side, so that is what we are going to beef up first. The difficult part of this is that a big chunk of the damage in this build coming from Doombolt doesn't really come online until you finish out the entire occultist mastery bar and start dumping points in there. The good news is that we get the AoE ability Sigil of Consumption much more early in the build, and that can really get leveled up very quickly to the maximum circular size of that ability, which is fantastic. This skill, Sigil of Consumption specifically, is one of the key points of this build, and it is going to be dealing a vitality damage and a very big AoE with some vitality decay damage on top of that. The level 19 version of this spell gives you 32% of attack damage converted to health, which is pretty gross because the cooldown on this ability is very, very low, and it is an AoE, so it's going to hit lots of people lots of the time. You can also put a point or two into destruction if you want to, but basically that is just going to buff up the vitality damage a little bit, add some fire and chaos damage in there too. Not a bad thing to have if you have got some gear that is tossing points into it for you also, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary if we're being honest. Inevitably, once you get this ability up to a decent chunk of points, it is going to get very, very, very large. If you manage to get it all the way up to the 25 mark, it is going to take up, I would say, about 15% of the screen, which is disgusting considering how small our character is. That being said, Sigil of Consumption is integral to this build, and you're going to want to take it no matter how you decide to play it. So, make sure that you start with that, and now we'll talk about all the other stuff that goes into this build as well, starting with the rest of the actives. On the occultist side of things, I mentioned Doombolt a little bit earlier, but this is a huge damage bursty ability for this kit, and Doombolt is going to do vitality and chaos damage with increased crit damage as well. This is a wonderful ability, not only damage-wise, but visually it is one of the most impressive things in the game. The sound's good, the visuals are good, it's a big red lightning ball from the sky that makes things explode. I don't think it needs any more description than that, but there you go. The next activatable button on the occultist tree is going to be the Blood of Dreeg. Now, this is our heal button, and we are also going to pick up a point or two into the aspect of the Guardian modifier. Probably get more with our extra points once this build is fully fleshed out, but ultimately, increased points into aspect of the Guardian increases your physical resistance when you have Blood of Dreeg going. But more importantly, the base ability itself has a 30-second duration. When you press the button, you're going to get 28% of your health immediately restored. You're going to deal acid damage, and you're going to get a whole bunch of offensive ability added to your kit. On top of that, you'll get some acid damage retaliation, which is fine, but you do get a whole bunch of health regen per second too. So, it is going to be going off for a very long time. You're going to get lots of health regen, and more importantly, you can get a lot of health back really quick if you're ever at the point where you're losing a lot, like I am right now, playing against Kraval, the Ancient of the Waters. This boss actually It's taken me a while to come back here. I'm not gonna lie to you. He slapped me down on one of my first couple builds that I thought was really good, and I've been a little bit traumatized and haven't made an appearance back. But well, it's time to pull out our balls and just show him exactly how much of a vampire and an M1 Abrams we actually are. So that being said, back to these buttons. On the soldier side of things, we do have a couple other activatables that are very nice. Number one is going to be Warcry, and this is super important to this build because Warcry is going to drag people towards your character, which is where you're likely going to be dumping all of your sigils of consumption. So basically, you drop a couple of those on the ground, you bring all of the bad guys towards you, and they start stepping on those things. Not to mention, Warcry is, it's very, very big AoE, and it is going to do a % reduction to the enemy targets, the target enemy's health. On top of that, it does reduce the target's damage for 5 seconds on, you know, just the general principle of being really a good ability. But since you're tanking everybody, since you're taunting everybody with this ability, it makes sense that it reduces their damage, so your taunt isn't just telling everybody to come punch you in the face without any defense. So, now that Croval is done, you'll notice on the map that Chupacabra is also here to test the build, and she is in for a whole lot of running in circles. Can't stand in them blood puddles, and pretty soon we're gonna have to deal with multiples of the big bad babe, but I can happily say that we're doing a lot of damage to her, and it doesn't feel bad like it did with my Reaper. So that being said, this is on the playtest patch. It's the new thing coming out. You're gonna see new stuff with the monster infrequents, the double rares. Cool little identifiers are now going to show up on the items that drop, signifying if they are extra special. That being said, there are a ton of other changes in the patch, like the removal of the potions from your hotbar. They now have their own little bar above your health and your energy, which is super cool, and a whole bunch of item and enemy and devotion changes that you should go read the patch notes about if you're really into that stuff. But the rest of the Warcry build part ability that I was talking about is the Break Morale. Break Morale is the one upgrade to it, only requires a point or two. It's going to have a chance to disrupt, no, not even a chance, it just straight up disrupts the target's skills for 3.8 seconds and reduces their physical resistance. That physical resistance reduction isn't as big a deal as the disruption of their skills, which is pretty crazy good. Obviously, bigger bosses have bigger resistances to that, but as it stands, super useful for every other kind of enemy, and still mostly useful on bosses unless they resist it entirely. Next on the soldier side of things is Blitz, and this is literally a single button mobility skill. We do not care about any of the stats, don't care about anything that it does other than getting us from point A to point B quicker. So put 1 point in Blitz, say it's good, and then if you really want to, you can get a glyph movement ability too. Since we've got some freed up action bar options now, it's pretty cool to have multiple movement ability skills. As far as other activatables go, though, we have 2 remaining on the soldier side of things, which is funny because the occultist side is much more important. But Cadence is our auto attack replacement button. Cadence is going to get charged up, and you are going to deal physical damage as well as almost 4 times, weapon damage every 3rd swing. So Cadence goes 1, 2, and then boom. And that is everything that you need to know. Basically, you're going to take 7 points into Cadence, call it a day. You don't need any of the masteries because really it's just there to give you a little bit of oomph on your auto attacks when you can stand still and tank something. Because why wouldn't you want that if you're just standing there anyway. Lastly, there is going to be Overguard, and this build uses a shield, so Overguard is really, really helpful as a defensive button. You're going to get damage absorption with this, you're going to have your health regen increased, your shield block cooldown is going to be reduced, your stun duration reduction is going to go up, your shield damage blocked is also going to go up, and there is a 30% chance you will stun the people attacking you. This has a 10-second duration on a 24-second cooldown, and it is super helpful when you are being surrounded by mobs of annoying garbage. While you are eating all of their health, they are either, hitting your shield, getting stunned, or just not doing any damage at all because you're blocking everything. It's really very good for anybody using a shield. I would highly, highly recommend it. Now, there's about 5 million passives on the soldier tree, so I'm going to rattle those off real quick so we can talk about the gear. Markovian's Advantage, you're going to want that because that couples very well with Cadence, since we're going to be doing a lot of standing around and auto-attacking while we're stealing health. You've also got Fighting Spirit, which activates on a 22-ish% chance depending on how much points you have in it. You're going to get more damage and more offensive ability from there. Menhir's Will is incredibly, incredibly good for anybody using a shield or a two-handed weapon, because when your health drops below 30%, this is the automatic panic button that is going to save you by giving you 39% of your health back and a whole bunch of health per second. Really cannot say anything bad about this ability, other than you can't use it with, a caster or a shooty guy. Military Conditioning, a couple points in there will increase your physique and your health, which is what you want because you're a tanky guy. Shield Training, also good for a couple points to reduce that shield block time even more and increase the shield block chance. Your Veterancy is worth a couple points because it's going to increase your Constitution, which is your out-of-combat health regen, and it is going to give you some health regen per second while also increasing the health regen that you have already by about 10 to 20% depending on the number of points you have in there. It also reduces the requirement for armor, physique requirement, but that's not something that I've ever run into a problem with. Decorated Soldier, you want to take a whole bunch of points into this. Go ahead and max it out if you haven't, because it is going to increase your physical and internal trauma damage, which is not the important part. You're going to get 21% elemental resistance from this ability and 21% slow resistance. That is just a built-in elemental res for a character, and it is fantastic. Same vein of thought with Scars of Battle. Take a couple points into this, if not just maxing it out, because it's going to give you bleeding resistance, reduce your stun duration, your freeze duration, and increase your armor absorption by 12%. Fantastic. The soldier just has so many incredibly good passive abilities for being defensive. And then the last passive on this side of things is your Counter Strike. This is a defensive offense option, and it has a very, very good track record when it comes to soldier builds. So basically, you'll have this active, and it's got a 30% chance to go off. It is a 4-meter AoE around you, which is pretty decent. It's going to do part of your weapon damage. You're going to have 10% of your retaliation damage added to it, and it is going to do its own big chunk of physical and bleeding damage on top of that. It passively gives you physical damage retaliation as well, and increases all of your retaliation damage by 110%. It is just a workhorse of a defensive ability. You'll see it happen if you are looking for it, but if you're not paying attention, it can be very easy to miss, so you might think it's not doing anything. Definitely take it if you are looking to be a shield guy, because it is a workhorse button. And then the two passives on the Occultist side of things are going to be Soleil's Witchfire, which is going to give you chaos damage, attack speed, and increased vitality damage with Vitality Decay. You're going to take Consecrated Blade, which is going to convert 30% of your physical damage into chaos damage, which is very, very good as well. And then second right is going to have your Soleil's Witchfire add a vitality damage, flat vitality and flat vitality decay damage, as well as buffing your chaos damage and giving you a whopping 30% vitality resistance when you're up at 17 points on this ability. It is very, very big resistance for a built-in button like that. Lastly, there is Possession. Possession is going to give you 17% damage absorption, which is just wicked. It's going to add chaos damage, and you're going to get buffs to your acid, vitality, chaos, poison, and vitality decay, while getting 29% chaos resistance at level 16. That is yet another ability with built-in resistances taking up a big old chunk of what we can resist in Ultimate, and that is just chef's kiss. Not to mention, you get a 100% skill disruption protection with this ability on, which is, you know, part of the reason that it's an exclusive ability. It's an exclusive skill passive, so you can only pick one. If you wanted to go with an option on the soldier tree instead, you can pick up, and here's Bulwark, but I think trading the offensive and defensive stats that you get in Possession is worth that trade. But you know what? Hey, correct me if I'm wrong. If you have better luck with the other thing, let me know. Now, oh man, we've been talking about abilities for so long, I can't mention the gear enough. The set that you have to really make the best use of with this ability, or with this build, is the Blood Knight set. This is a 4-piece set. You'll need a helmet, a pendant, the scrolls, which are the shoulders, and a chest piece, which is the armor. That being said, these gear pieces do a whole lot for you, but I'm just going to talk about the passives first, because that's the really cool part. First of all, Blood Knight's Visage, which is the helmet, is going to reduce the cooldown of Counter-Strike, so it can activate more often, but it's also going to add vitality in the flat degree to Counter-Strike, as well as vitality decay. So that damage that we said it was doing earlier, it's now going to do the same type of damage that we really funnel everything into, which is vitality and vitality decay. It is great, super fun and awesome, and love it. Next on the list is the Blood Knight's Pendant. That one is going to give you a specific skill called Call Upon the Bloodbathed. You get a 20% chance upon attack, which we do a lot of, so very, very easy to have happen. So basically what this does is it raises up vitality skeletons. You have a 2.4 second skill recharge on it, but you can summon up to 4 of these bad boys, and they live for 16 seconds. They are going to deal vitality and bleeding damage, and are pretty cool to look at. They actually couple really well with the other really interesting part of this gear, which is the Soul of Nazaron. That is the Reap Spirit in red that's been following us around this whole game. You can summon him once you have this whole set unlocked. Gives you the ability. He's doing some vitality, bleeding damage as well, just like the skeletons, and it's really fantastic. He's just fun to have there. He's good for parties, you know? Not only that, but when you complete the set, you'll get a 15% of attack damage converted to health to Counter-Strike, as well as bleeding damage, and converting all of the physical damage into vitality damage for Counter-Strike. So very, very big Counter-Strike buffs. The gear also comes with a whole bunch of stats that we really love, but that's all I have time for today. I will see you guys in the next one. Let me know what you think of this build, because I absolutely love it. Peace out.